I have always had fascination of Ouija signs, but I would never play with them because I have always heard enough stories of which I could not sleep. A friend of my mother once played with a Ouija board, and she was a teen. She just asked things like, how many children should I have, and if she would marry and with whom. The board said that she would have 2 children, and it also spelled out the name of her husband to be. For privacy reasons, I will call him Eric. So guess what? 11 years later, she met Eric. They got married and they now have 2 daughters. Nothing bad happened, but keep in mind, Ouija boards are not toys. I was a freshman in high school when I became friends with Sammy. Sammy was 2 years older than me, and she was the girl that no one wanted to get into a fight with. I'll describe her for a minute. She was a tall, skinny girl with long black hair that fell down her shoulders and back. She had red highlights, and now that I think about it, she could definitely use a trim back then. She always wore dark makeup, and maybe a red flag for many, but I thought she was cool. Secretly, I just wanted to be friends with her, because she didn't really have any. She was yelled and laughed at. The popular kids would call her the voodoo chick. Despite the age difference, Sammy and I became good friends. I didn't understand why people made fun of her, but yes, she was different, but didn't we all really experience a period in which we were weird and different? It was just before the summer holidays that Sammy and I decided to go to a house party that was hosted by a classmate. Around 11:45, we were sitting on the couch around this glass table with a Ouija board on it. Sammy had taken it with her. She must have thought that it was cool to bring. Anyways, we asked it stupid questions. Obviously, we were just playing around with it, not knowing the damage that it could cause. We took it more seriously when nobody was playing anymore. But yet, the blanket kept moving. Things moved on their own, and Sammy seemed to become happier every time something creepy happened. She kept saying things like, "Don't worry, she won't harm us." We never got an explanation about that. The board answered all the questions without us touching it. I didn't want anything to do with it anymore, but Sammy wanted to and decided to ask, "When am I going to die?" It took a while before the blanket moved. It moved to 6. But what does that mean? 6 hours, 6 minutes, 6 days, weeks, months, years? We laughed it off as just a joke because we were all so scared. We closed the circle and ended the night. Sammy didn't come back to school after the summer holidays. Nobody knows why. She no longer wanted contact with anyone, and she didn't want to see anyone. I just graduated from high school and read the newspaper during my lunch at the office. When I turn the page, my heart stops as I see a "Rest in peace, dear Sammy." According to the page, she committed suicide without even saying goodbye or leaving a note behind. The only thing she left was that old Ouija board and 6 diaries. So, I had a pretty unconventional upbringing. I grew up listening to Black Sabbath and the like, and my mom has always been into everything that could pass as not quite normal. She's been reading my tarot cards since I was 7. One of my childhood pastimes was contacting the dead. We would traditionally use Scrabble tiles, placing them in a circle A to Z with pieces of paper with numbers and the word yes and no written on them. I might not be explaining it well, but I'm sure y'all could Google it to find out what kind of setup I mean. We would then take a small glass, usually a sherry glass, and drag it around the walls of the living room to seal the room. We would take up position around the table, and each of us would place a forefinger lightly on the glass. My mom is very sensitive to things like this, and usually we would have something come through immediately. You can feel the energy in the glass, I swear. So, We had been doing stuff like this for years, and there has always been a feel or something being there at Mom's house. It has never been a malevolent force. In fact, besides being a little mischievous, this presence would wake up my brother if he was running late for school, or help me find my hairbrush. I never felt threatened until the last Ouija board we did. We set up the table and sealed the room, and first it was like a normal anytime session, but after a while, the atmosphere thickened, was almost tangible, and whatever was speaking to us was clearly not there to idle chit-chat. This being called itself Legion, and its parting words to us was, "Choose your side, for this is the end of days. I am coming." And the energy left the glass. The atmosphere thinned out. We packed up pretty fast after that. It wasn't until a few weeks after I had started having the night terrors. I would wake up in the middle of the night, paralyzed. There was something in my room with me. With each night terror, the thing in my room came closer and closer to my bed. Then, one night, I awoke into this thing standing over me, inches from my face. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I could barely breathe. This thing would never harm me, while I was awake at least. It would pull the covers off of me, move things around in my room, and I would wake up with scratches and bruises that had no explanation. I was terrified of going to bed. I couldn't be on my own. I was a mess. This went on for weeks, and then something happened that I just didn't see coming. I felt another presence. I felt very strongly that this presence was a she, and she was there to protect me. Every night I would go to bed and try to fall asleep. I would wake up, and there she would be, somewhere close by, keeping that thing away from me. I had started to imagine, or maybe even see, what this girl looked like. She was young, maybe 14 to 15, with long, blonde hair over her face. She looked malnourished, and her clothes were dirty and tattered. Eventually, the dark thing stopped showing up. Maybe it got bored. I don't know, but Blondie, she stuck around. I had told my mom about the dark thing, and she put it down to bad dreams. But the worse it got, the more she believed the things I was saying. So when I told her about Blondie, I expected her to be a little skeptical, but instead she accepted my story. I began describing Blondie. I told my mom she was young, thin, with long hair, before I could tell her that it was blonde. My mom looked at me and said, "She's blonde, isn't she?" I was a little startled. My mom continued, "A few days ago, I was walking to the fridge, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw a young girl with blonde hair sitting on the bottom step." It gives me goosebumps to just think of this. But still, I don't know if the dark thing in my room was the same being claiming to be Legion. I don't know if Blondie was the original malevolent force that we had felt in my mom's house. What I do know is, our Ouija board allowed something to come into our house. Something mean and malevolent. Something that wanted to hurt me. I haven't done Ouija for a long time now, and have no intention of ever doing it again. We had been playing with things that we didn't understand and couldn't control, and I strongly advise you to never participate in stuff like this. It really is not as fun as you'd think. I am rather new to Reddit, and I do not know if all of these stories on the No Sleep are true, but the story I'm about to tell you is true. Here is the story. I found out about this story not too long ago, maybe 4-ish months ago, if I had to say. It came from my grandmother a along with my mother and some of our other family members. One day when I was much younger, I found a Ouija board in my grandma's basement. I never liked the room where the games were, because my grandpa had always told me that the boogeyman lived down there when I was little. I brought the board upstairs and asked my mom and grandma what it was. They told me about it, and my grandma let me take it home. I never played with it because it frightened me. I would get a cold feeling when I walked by it, and I would lose sleep over it. Finally, I gave it back to my grandma. Years later, I was doing research on the paranormal, so I decided to look into this Ouija board that my grandma had again. So, while visiting, I grabbed it from downstairs and brought it upstairs. Then my grandma and mom told me the story about it. The story is about my mother's best friend's sister. She and her friends were all hanging out one night and decided to play with it. After all, they were older girls, almost 18, almost out of high school. So, they began playing, but the girls decided to ask questions that apparently you should not ask. When am I going to die? And the board's reply was, prior to 18. The girls were freaked out a little bit, but after they all calmed down, they got over it. Then, 2 days later, she died in a car crash, and the board had never been used since. Thanks for watching, I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to like, comment, and if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. I'm sorry for such a short upload and everything. I've got a lot of personal stuff going on right now. Trying to deal with all of that, and it's a definite nightmare, so I do apologize for 1, the late upload, and 2, the short video. God, I'm tired. But make sure to check out the links in the description, like Twitter, Instagram, everything like that is in there, including my Gmail if you would like to submit a story. I've got a lot of content and a lot more coming, so make sure to keep an eye out for that. And if you're not a channel member, and you would like to be, because I just posted an all-original, directed and written by Gemini Reads story on there. Trust me, it's wild. I've got 4 other people helping me with it. One big story, all of us narrating. But if you would like to see that, make sure to go check that out. With that being said, stay safe, stay scary, and I'll see you in the next one.